Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Candice and I help people who have ADHD understand and manage their brain. Today we're going to be talking about something that has happened to me for the past few months, and I'm talking about ADHD Rut. Basically what happened is that I'm unable to produce for a long period of time. And what I mean produce is, produce something that I love and something that requires some crafts and thinking, and for me this is my videos. So because I've been stuck for so long, 5 months I think, or 6, I figured it was time to actually try to understand what was going on with my brain with this thing that is YouTube videos for me, because I really want to make videos. I love making them. I love seeing your feedback. Despite that, I still struggle to make videos, and sometimes I can get stuck not doing anything about it for months, as I did this time, even though I will wake up and think about it every day. So it doesn't make sense to most of the people who know me and who know I have a YouTube channel, because they're probably like, oh, she forgot she had a YouTube channel and she doesn't want to make videos anymore. Although in my head I'm thinking about it every day and it's literally torturing me, and I'm trying to understand why am I not working on it. So yeah, in this video I want to dissect what's really happening with this ADHD rut and why are we not able to do the things we really want to do, the hard things that are really important to us. And for me, this is my YouTube channel. First things first, what happened to me in the past 5 months? So as I started to describe, I fell into a rut, what I called here an ADHD rut, where I basically stopped working on that really important thing in my life completely. So I got into a pattern of thinking and doing that was really unproductive, meaning that every day I would think about writing videos, filming, and new ideas and stuff, but I would just keep it in my head. I would think about writing it. Sometimes I would plan sessions, writing scripts and stuff, but I never got to it. It always was in the back of my head, but I never got to actually do anything about it. When I finally had this realization, like, oh my god, you've been thinking about it for 5 months, but you still haven't written one word, I got some ideas flowing and I thought about making a video out of it because I thought it was crazy. If I can help one of you guys get unstuck from this kind of ADHD paralysis, if you've seen my previous video on ADHD paralysis, this has a lot to do with it, but in a different way, because what's happened there, it's something on a larger scale. It's not just being paralyzed for one decision you have to make. It's just a paralysis that stays in time, that lasts a long time, and that can actually really affect the outcome of a year or 10 years or your life. And you don't want to get stuck in that, because that leads to regrets. And if you want to do something that's really important to you, you should find ways to do it. What I realized is that the ADHD experience and the neurotypical experience seems quite different to me. So from what I've noticed from my own experience, I tend to get really hyped up for something and then do it all in one go. I'll fit all the work in a short period of time for me. So like if I film a video, I'll be like, okay, I need to write it now and then film it and then edit it and then post it. But it takes so much energy from me and I don't think about anything else. That's all I want to do. And then when I post it, I have such a huge feeling of relief and also of fear about doing it another time and another time, because I know how much effort and energy it took me to get there. And I think that's because problems we have with executive functions, organization, working memory, anything that requires those skills as a video maker makes it difficult to make videos, obviously. So it does take a lot of energy, but then once you're done, you have two choices. You have number one, you keep making those videos, and so you keep writing and you keep making them. And number two, you stop and you just think about making videos without actually acting on it. And this is kind of the slump I fell into. I think it's the slump I fall into every time I make videos. And that's why I think there's the ADHD experience and the neurotypical. I guess the neurotypical people kind of have this ability to consistently say, I will post one video a week or one video a month. And with ADHD people, I've noticed, I mean, for myself, that anytime I try to say I'll be that consistent, it never happens. And it doesn't really yield any productive results to put myself in this mindset of rigidity and consistency. So what usually happens is very high highs, very low lows, and I can stay in the lows for a long time before I make another video, but the longer I stay in those lows, the deeper it gets and the harder it is to get back. This is kind of what it looked like for 5 months. it was me coming down from my last video being like really hyped up because I produced something, I got feedback from the viewers, from you guys, and I was so happy. And then I was like, oh, I have to do it again. And if you let yourself think too much and you get overwhelmed by ideas, tasks, and restrictions you put on yourself, it all becomes too much. And this is kind of what happened for me, because I was thinking about it so much, like I need to make another video and I need to make it quick and I need to make it in 1 month because otherwise I will lose my consistency, which I, by the way, never had, but it's like, I don't know, a dream of mine. That didn't happen. So basically nothing happened. And that's exactly the difference between ADHD experience and neurotypical's experience, is the intensity and the variation between the very high and the very low, and also the distance between those peaks of production. Someone who's neurotypical can produce consistently. Someone with ADHD tends to have gaps between production times, I guess. Gaps that vary between, 1 week, 2 weeks, 2 months, 5 months. Despite this, as I said in my video on inconsistency, the most important thing is to actually show up and do the thing. And as long as we're persistent and keep doing it, it doesn't really matter the amount of time we leave between the videos, as long as we do it. Even though it's quite frustrating for us because we put our standards up there and we kind of tend to have the same neurotypical standards as neurotypicals, even though we don't have the same brain. So usually it makes us quite frustrated. But yeah, I'll try to give you some kind of, like, the drawing I made is quite interesting. But that's what I was trying to say. Very consistent line with the neurotypicals. Very like, yeah, all over the place line for ADHD people. This is what I call the ADHD rut. What I think happens with ADHD people versus neurotypicals is an imbalance in terms of overload and overwhelm. What I mean is, when you have ADHD, there's a lot of things and ADHD traits and symptoms that favor this overload and overwhelm that we know so well if you have ADHD. So I kind of view it like this. There is this balance or scale between overload and motivation. And when you want to achieve something difficult and something that takes craft and is important to you, you need to have motivation in order to, push yourself to reach your goals, but you also need to have a decent management of your thoughts and emotions in order to move forward. If you have those thoughts and emotions overloaded by external or internal stimuli, then you cannot move forward because your balance is off and the overload is so heavy that it prevents you from moving. That's kind of how I started seeing it. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into this overload in ADHD. Firstly, there's the fear of rejection and rejection sensitivity. Very strong in some ADHD people, like me. It's when you have this very intense fear and intense reaction to rejection, be it perceived or real. So that really applies to anything where you put your work out there, like YouTube videos. And, it's things where you start thinking people are going to say this about my videos and people are going to comment negative things. And some things can be true, but it can get you stuck, and this is kind of what happened this period where I didn't film videos. There's also other things like perfectionism, wanting to film only on the perfect day, the perfect time, having the perfect script, and perfectionism especially in the sense like I want to have the perfect writing routine and I want to know how to make videos. So I always thought I don't have the perfect routine and the perfect way of making videos, like there must be a secret way. I kept looking for it, like how do people actually write? How do people post? How do people do this and that? And I figured like everyone has their own way. And once that kind of sunk in, I started like writing again and producing this video. So this perfectionism really, really pulls me away from my goals and makes me not be able to produce anything. And there's also emotional regulation. So having all those thoughts obviously provokes a lot of emotions, most of them negative. If your thoughts are only thoughts like, it's gonna take way too long, this is too complicated, I can't do this, obviously the emotions to this are fear, anxiety, a lot of negative things that you kind of stew in your brain. There's this brain fog that kind of settles in one, and that's characteristic to ADHD also. Brain fog is when you kind of have thoughts, emotions mixing up in your brain, and you can't really discern what thought is saying what. Even me trying to explain it is kind of like a verbal brain fog, but it's basically very hard to know what you're thinking and explain it, and it's all mixed up in your head. It's really hard to process it, and I think that's the word, because those emotions and everything that goes into that overload and that overwhelm, that you need to be processed. And when you get stuck in that overload, like I got stuck, it gets harder and harder to come out of it, because if you don't have the keys and the right reflexes and tools to get out of it, it's just a continuous cycle of thoughts, emotions, reactions, excuses. I had 1,000 excuses to not do anything for 5 months, and this protective mechanism of my brain kind of worked pretty well because I didn't do anything. And other than that, it's not just a protective mechanism, it's just how the ADHD brain works. We have trouble getting to do the task, and so the more we get stuck in those feelings and those negative spirals of I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, it just becomes a reality, and we get stuck in regrets like I did every month, thinking, oh, I could have already posted a video and I know I'm capable of it, but something is holding me back. So now that I've explained this cycle of emotion, thoughts, and reactions and excuses that you give yourself, how do you get out of it? Because I think getting out of it is the key to actually moving towards your goal. So you have, as I said, this balance of overload and motivation, and it's only when you have a straight balance, so the overload kind of equals the motivation in terms of weight, then I think you can move forward. And to get the balance back up, for me, there was a few things to do to break that cycle. So let me give you like the 5 tips for me that I think have really helped into breaking this cycle and getting out of this ADHD freeze to finally make videos and content and just get me to a happy place because I'm producing work I love. So step 1 to get out of this cycle is to actually become aware of it. So it's important to know, where do you locate yourself right now in the cycle? Is it a lot of emotions that you're feeling? Are you giving yourself a lot of negative thought about particular aspects of the work you need to do? And I think the first step is kind of to debunk those thoughts. We tend to get so lost in the excuses, like we tell ourselves this whole narrative of like, I can't do this because of that, and so I'm not able to make videos because, I don't have the right camera, the right light. It can be all kinds of thoughts. Sometimes when you get too stuck on them, you're stuck in the narrative. You don't even see yourself thinking that from, a higher perspective. So in order to take that step back, which is quite hard for us with ADHD, I think the only thing is to write. And I hate giving that advice because I'm so bad at doing it, which is why it took me 5 months to finally get out of this freeze. But the only thing that works truly is getting your thoughts on paper, and this is the only way to get out of brain fog. This is the only way to process those emotions that have accumulated. Anger, jealousy, fear, is to actually write them down and be like, I feel this because that. Not even try at first to solve every problem and every fear, but at least write everything down, and not in a structured way. Just like throw words out there, sentences, drawings, whatever you want. Just get something out of paper. If you're stuck on something important you want to do, everything you feel about that thing, and it will dissolve into something understandable and manageable, and it will make it so much easier to get started and take steps, like actual steps to produce. And so that's my first advice. The second one that I tried actually doing was I opened up Notion and I started creating a table of risk assessment. So I had so many fears about a lot of things. I kind of got into a fear spiral. This could happen. Why would I even want to make videos online? So many horrible things could happen to me. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to write down those fears and write down the risk associated to them. And I'm going to rank them by severity, likelihood, and then I'm going to combine the severity and the likelihood and see how critical those fears and risks are. And it was actually quite fun to do. It made me like really write them down and kind of like admit all my demons, and then see, okay, which ones are actually critical and how can I reduce the risk. So I also had a column where I wrote down risk reduction measures, where I would be like, okay, for this fear, if I do this, this will reduce the likelihood of going through that. And then at the end of the exercise, I had this whole table filled up and I was like ranking those risks by criticity, and I found out that not a lot of them were critical. Like I think the highest ranking for criticity, I don't even know the word, was like 16. Most of them were around 6, like 1 to 6, and I was like, whoa, I think I made a big deal out of so many fears, even though like they're quite tiny and I can totally manage them. So that was really helpful, and I think it's something fun, and I mean, I guess fun for me because I like organizing my thoughts. And I think it's this dichotomy in ADHD that is so not understandable, where we thrive on organization and we also thrive on the lack of it. And so I don't know, this exercise kind of worked well with me, so I don't know, maybe you can try it, give it a go and see if it unblocks you. But yeah, that would be my second advice. My third advice would be to start small. What I tend to do is to put myself some amazing expectations, like you need to write 1 hour per day, you need to produce that many pages and write that many ideas, and you need to produce like 2 videos a month, even though I know it's completely unrealistic. And so what I started doing once I unpacked, you know, all the emotions and thoughts around making videos, and once I kind of got through the hardest part, I was like, okay, I know that in order to write videos, I need to write. So figure out like the smallest thing that you need to do in order to get closer to your goal. If you need to paint, maybe every day you need to doodle. If you need to make music, every day you need to sing, or like to practice, warm up your voice. I don't know, it could be something really small that takes you closer. And for me, that was like obviously writing down ideas and structuring my ideas into something that I can film. And I started being like, okay, I'm not going to be able to write 1 hour per day, but maybe I can write just like 1 line every day, or as much as I can. So I started tracking how many times I was writing per week, and it could be just like I open my notebook, I write 5 lines and I'm done for the day, and I'm happy because the process of getting out the book, writing it down, that meant I was actually doing something towards my goal, and it felt really good, and it felt like it was moving me closer and closer to my objective. It felt like being in action was actually making me a real YouTuber, as in I was doing something that a YouTuber does, which is writing videos. And that's what I would suggest. Just take a small habit. Don't try to make it too consistent, because you know you can't. But be like, okay, if I do it once a week, I'm happy. If I do it twice, I'm happy. If I do it none, then maybe I'm like, okay, how can I make sure I do it at least once the next week? But just start small and be okay with starting small. I think that would be like my third advice. My fourth really important advice would be to be okay being all over the place. So as I said, it's really disturbing how for me as an ADHDer, I love organization. I love having everything neat and in place. And I also really struggle to produce in that way. So produce content, like stuff that's coming out of my brain doesn't come out so neat and tidy. It usually comes out more in waves of, you know, unstructured thoughts and unstructured words and blurs. So I found it really restrictive to force myself to write very neatly on paper and, you know, in those very clear notes. I don't know if you see what I mean, but just like everyone writes, you know, in lines and stuff. And I didn't really allow myself to doodle and draw as I wanted. I don't know if I was taught. My education maybe kind of like refrained me from feeling free and creative on paper, but I'm trying more and more to free myself creatively on paper and, you know, use my notebooks as I want, so I can write in any place I want. I don't restrict myself to, you know, you need to write in that one notebook and nowhere else. I used to do that a lot. Now I'm like, if I write on my phone, on my computer, on one notebook, and then the next day, it's okay. The important thing is that I write, and then I'll find things all over the place and it's fine. Like the important thing is not to have like a super organized system that's really nice to look at. The important thing is to produce something important. So if that means you need to write all over the place and draw and circle things and color things, and that's your creative process, then great. And I'm telling you this while I'm learning it and going through it, so I'll see how it goes. But I think liberating myself from these restrictions that I actually put on myself made me feel much more relaxed and able to produce actually what I wanted to produce. Yeah, that would be my fourth advice. My fifth and final advice is to let things take the time they take. Oftentimes we see people online advocating for complicated organizational systems where it will get you to produce that much and be very productive, do great things because you're so organized. I've consumed so much content like this that I felt for a while that it didn't really work with me, and I didn't know why I couldn't keep up with it. And I'm starting to figure out slowly but surely that most of the people I was watching were neurotypicals, clearly. Now I can kind of pick, when I see a creator, those that are ADHD and those that are not. I mean, I'm not a psychologist and I can't diagnose anyone through the screen, but I kind of get the sense, like, the traits of the people that I watch. And I see now that those with the same characteristics and traits as me usually have very different ways of organizing themselves. But I used to watch so many neurotypicals. We all are used to being educated in a system made for neurotypicals. Those principles are so ingrained in our brain that it's really hard to step away and learn to do things your own way. So I think that's the last thing to say about this is, in order to get out of a freeze, and that's more like a long-term advice, but it's to learn how to do things your own way, learn how to make your brain work for you instead of working against your brain. And that is complicated because, as I said, we live in a world still very highly adapted to neurotypicals because we're, a minority, obviously, and I think that's kind of normal. But as we go, I think more and more solutions for us are going to be developed, and it's nice. But for now, it takes time to actually, debunk everything we've learned from neurotypicals and create our own stories. And it takes even more time, and it's even more frustrating for us because all the symptoms of ADHD kind of hold us back in this quest of finding our own systems and doing the things we want to do and doing them well. So give yourself time. You'll get there, but start building your own system and kind of throw out everything you've learned that doesn't really suit you and your brain. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one.